Hello, folks, and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Your ears did not deceive you. We got copyright claim, then had to find a new intro song. Finally, after years and years, the Buffalo Killers found me, and we had to find a royalty-free song. This one's pretty sweet, though. The Big Orange Podcast. We talk everything Vols every week. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That means we're live on YouTube, the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube. But you should also go and subscribe there, hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when we go live. But also, the A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols YouTube channel, where you got clips of our show. You got Lucas Panzico of 1045 making videos for us now. Tons of Vols content, and it's Vols only content, so you don't have to hear anything about the garbage dump Tennessee Titans, who I wish they were doing better. The content would probably be a little more fun to make for all the other dudes at A to Z Sports, but such is life. At Charlie_Burrows, that's Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports. A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. What an amazing show we get to do once again, Zach. I mean, what a string of events that we are on at this point. Elite Eight for basketball, national championship for baseball. Football comes in. The offseason was fun because, vibes were high. You walk into Norman, Oklahoma, and you snatch their chain. You dominate them. This game was not nearly as close as the score would suggest. What's up, Zach?
Yeah, just like when we took Dixieland Delight back from Alabama in 2022, we stole the cowboy hats from Oklahoma. Saw all their fans wearing them, and why not carry the celebration in little few extra days? It's a bye week after all, right? We get to celebrate a little extra too, just like the team does. But yeah, heck of a night. Really anxious all day Saturday, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, that one was weird because we were all texting each other, you, me, Austin Stanley, Craig of all of A to Z, and you guys were saying, "Oh, I'm so nervous. This I can just feel something bad's gonna happen." And I don't know. I just came in feeling zen. I was sort of like, we are the better football team. And I feel like people that have listened to me for a long time wouldn't believe that because I've been the cynical guy. I've been the, Charlie, he's got to be negative Nelly. Zach can attest. Am I lying, Zach?
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, that's so true because you saying that did give me a little bit of comfort on Saturday going into the game. I was like, Charlie's never this confident. So maybe I should relax just a little bit.
I believe, let me see if I can search it up. I believe the exact phrase that I used.
I think you said we're going to kick their ass like several times.
That is,
no
I'm pretty sure.
Terms.
I just looked up the word there on our. Oh man, well I'd have to find it later. We say that a lot in our group chat.
There was confidence. There was plenty of confidence from Charlie. Craig, to his credit too, was pretty confident. It was really me and Austin that were exhibiting the battered Vol syndrome on Saturday.
Yeah. But I'm happy to say that I have shed some of that, so I'm sure that's a relief to somebody who's been listening for a long time. And they go, finally, Charlie is a little more positive. There you go.
To your credit, the negativity has usually been correct.
Unfortunately, that is something that I've kind of hung my hat on in my media career. I have been negative all the time, and unfortunately, I was right more than I was ever wrong until Danny White and Josh Heupel showed up. And here we are. You go and you win at Oklahoma. You win, one of the biggest games of the last 15 years for Tennessee football. Tons of fun. And obviously on tonight's show, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about all of it. And specifically, now you look the way that you look, powerful defense, offense. We'll discuss sort of Heupel's strategy there. And is Tennessee a true contender? We're going to dive in to all of that. You know where it's going. right after I tell you about the good folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big thanks to them for being a longtime partner with us. Go get yourself a health plan. All right. Saturday night, 7:30, Tennessee comes out, emotional. Josh Heupel's return. They honor him on the video board. They didn't do it like a whole ceremony or anything. They just kind of said, Josh Heupel's returning, our national championship quarterback, tapped his chest, and hey, that's nice. And then he pretty much just unceremoniously went out there, and thankfully, as I predicted pregame, they went out there and just kind of drug Oklahoma around. Hopefully they drag Alabama around here in a few weeks. Maybe this Oklahoma game is a good sign. But yeah, I mean, the score doesn't really indicate exactly how this game went. But what were your high-level thoughts on this, Zach?
I mean, it was such a unique game. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see another Tennessee game like this, and it's one I think we'll remember for a long time. It's not quite 2022 Alabama, but I would say for me it's right under that. Just everything surrounding the game, obviously the storyline going into the game, Josh Heupel's return to Norman. That was the national media storyline. It was our storyline, local guys' storyline. But really this game was about solidifying a path to the playoff for Tennessee, because you win this game and suddenly things look a lot easier. So it was a pressure-packed game for the Vols, really. If you think about it, all the pressure's on Tennessee, not Oklahoma. Venables, they won, 10 games last year? He's an Oklahoma guy. They love him. He's safe for now, even if he goes like 8-5 this year. It's their first year in the SEC. Young quarterback. The pressure's kind of off of them, I felt like, and no matter what anybody said. And to go out there and to not only, win the game, to win the game with your defense, really, and to adjust your game plan to what Oklahoma was doing. I thought that was the most impressive thing. Heupel said after the game he expected Brent Venables to throw some stuff at him that he had not seen on film, some new looks, just because he's known Brent Venables 25 years. He knows how the guy thinks. That's exactly what Venables did. It's what their defensive coordinator said after the game, that they saved some stuff for this game. And Oklahoma's defense was playing really well against Tennessee's offense and taking a lot of stuff away. They were tough against the run. Tennessee adjusted their plan. They trusted their defense, and they went out and they won a game the way that Kentucky wanted to beat Tennessee a couple of years ago. Kentucky talked about, their real football and controlling the clock and running the ball. That's what Tennessee went out there and did. They ran the ball 52 times. They won the time of possession by 10 minutes. They slowed the tempo down. It was just such a different way to win a huge road game. And that should be, I know there's a lot of people, not a lot, but some fans that are a little, peeved that this wasn't a, 52-17 win where the offense was just explosive. And sometimes you don't have to win games like this in the SEC to win a national championship. I don't care how good your offense is. Sometimes this is what happens. And you have to be able to prove that you can win on the road at night in a hostile environment against a really good defense, doing some things you don't usually do. And for me, that was the biggest takeaway from all of it was how they went out there and won that game and trusted that plan in the second half. I mean, it got to a point where we knew they were going to run the ball on first down, and they were probably going to pick up a yard or two unless Sampson or Bishop happened to, break one off or find a hole, which they did several times. But for the most part, there was a lot of those short little runs, and you bleed 35 seconds off the clock and find a way to maybe get a first down, extend it a little bit, end in a field goal or a punt, put them in a tough spot on the field. One time that led to a safety. I mean, all that was something we're not accustomed to seeing a Josh Heupel team do, and he showed that he can do it in one of the biggest games of his career. It was very impressive.
It really was fantastic. I'll go into detail here, but I think it's the finest coaching job that he's done in his time at Tennessee. Because I look at a game like Alabama, and Alabama just played his game with him there. Alabama just tried to hang on for dear life, and he beat them at the game that he is so good at playing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing. I mean, that coaching job was incredible, and you beat Nick Saban, and that's so good. But this one, Crompton on our post-game show, he kind of made the comparison to like the Phil Fulmer days. Like, it was get up and use your defense to hang on. And that is so antithetical to everything that Heupel has done here. And now, Crompton, I do want to talk about something in our postgame. Again, myself, Jonathan Crompton, our postgame, halftime and postgame right here where you're watching this show, the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. He's the quarterback from 2009. If you're not a long-suffering Tennessee fan, he does, and we do that show every week. But his take was that Heupel doesn't trust Nico. And during the show, I generally agreed with him, but I've thought about it more since then. And actually, I don't know that I fully agree with that. And I see Chris McMahon's comment here. He says, the more experience Nico can get, the scarier this team is going to be. I think they are easing Nico into the season, but the kid looks poised. I think this is spot on. What Chris is saying. I don't think that Heupel 100% implicitly trusts Nico. How could you? The kid is about to play his 6th collegiate game ever. I mean, he is still so young in his career, and there is zero wrong with that in terms of not just saying we're gonna let you go out there and basically be the offensive coordinator. Like, that would honestly be stupid on Heupel's part because the kid is still so fresh into his career. But I do think he trusts him to go out and perfectly be a game manager. And that showed so beautifully here. And I don't want to like make him akin to like an AJ McCarron. Ultimately, I think his ceiling is incredibly high. His ceiling is a Heisman Trophy and being the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Like, I think that's how good this kid can be. But for right now, Heupel asked him to make a few explosive plays, and he did that in that first half. You got it by 20. And then Heupel said, call it a day. Let's fold it up. Go conservative. We're draining this clock down. I will say, in terms of their efforts to drain the clock, they continue to snap the ball with like 20 seconds left on the play clock. Don't totally get the strategy there, but hey, we're getting into the finer points there, kind of getting nitpicky. But he just went out, didn't turn the ball over, did everything he was supposed to do, and Tennessee didn't beat themselves, and so they won this game. And they didn't just win it; they won. They covered. And there was, I know Oklahoma fans have been trying to soothe their wounds by saying, oh, well, you only won by 10. If Hawkins plays the whole game, we probably win by 30. This is, let me tell you, if you're an Oklahoma fan watching this, no idea why you would, but if you just happen to be, scrolling by, no, you're just completely wrong. Tennessee, there was not a second in this football game beyond, I don't know, late in the first quarter where this thing was in question. Like, it was comprehensive, especially from the defensive side of the football. You weren't going to score enough to beat Tennessee. If they had to turn it back up and put Nico at risk, they would have done it. I think ultimately you may have had an additional turnover or two if you did that, and that's what they were trying to avoid. Both of your tackles are out. And I'll say Larry Summers did a very admirable job. And so did Dane Davis. Dane Davis, he's just not an SEC body. Unfortunately for him, it's what God gave him. And he's just...
That's a pretty good defense, too.
It was. That's probably the second best defense Tennessee's going to face all season. In fact, I'm pretty confident in saying that. They got a really good defensive unit, and they brought it, and they were jacked up for that game. The home crowd was behind them, and they still couldn't stop the explosive plays when Tennessee was still had a little bit more of an open playbook in that first half. They couldn't do it. They couldn't hold it back all the way. They let an 8-play drive that was nothing but runs right down their throat happen, and it was so satisfying. The final run of that drive ended with Dylan Sampson running directly into their all-star, all-exalted Superman linebacker, bounced right off of him, dragged into the end zone. So beautiful. And then, of course, I mean, that route over the middle that was a 60-yard touchdown, one of the most beautiful throws you will ever see in collegiate football.
The catch as well.
Every piece of it. Thornton truly coming into his own now. I think that kid may be in for a special season if it continues on the current trajectory. This thing was never in doubt. It was domination. Do not let the final score lull you into thinking, Oklahoma fans, lull you into thinking that you had a chance here. You didn't. That's how good Tennessee is this season, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, and Oklahoma fans can just look to their head coach, who said on their coach's show, he liked the way the defense was playing early in the game because they were making it tough on Tennessee. I mean, it's not like they were just running the score up like they did against Kent State. They hit some explosive plays, but they weren't all there. But by the time, like you said, Tennessee got up by 20 points or so, when they kind of dialed things back, they didn't have to keep doing that. Venables said, he's like, look, I know that Tennessee played a tight, conservative game. He's like, early, the playbook was open, and then they kind of shut things down. So that's part of the reason, that they only scored 25 points. And even Bob Stoops said today he doesn't think another team will hold Tennessee to 345 yards and 25 points again this season, just the way that game unfolded. So, maybe it's kind of like I think one of y'all mentioned it in the group text. It was almost like being Oklahoma was on the side of that Tennessee-Georgia game a couple of years ago, where Georgia kind of had a very similar strategy. They only won by 14 points, but they were trying to eat up the clock and keep the ball away from Tennessee as much as possible to just kind of get the game to the finish. Yep. And, sometimes you can do that. That doesn't work often. Jeremy Pruitt wanted to do that every single week that he was the coach at Tennessee, and I think it worked against Auburn, and that was about it. It seemed like
one time.
Yeah, and which is still a miracle, that game. But with the Nico stuff too, I don't necessarily think that there's like he doesn't trust Nico. I think it was just, look, it's his first road game in a very, and it's not Vanderbilt. It's not, an easier environment to play at. It is a very tough, loud environment. They were hyped up for this game with all the circumstances surrounding it. Why put him in a situation if you don't have to? If this game would have turned into a Tennessee's defense wasn't as good as it was, and this would have turned into a shootout, you would have seen a much different approach from Josh Heupel, and they would have needed Nico to go out there and win the game. And there's probably going to be some games this year where Nico has to go out and win the game, where maybe the defense just doesn't play as well, or the other team has a really good game plan. You never know. But in this was such, I said earlier, it's such a unique game where Venables is, he's almost a defensive version of Heupel. He can play chess out there with defense, and he knows these ways to attack these Big 12 kind of inspired offenses. So it was, you make your move, and Heupel has to counter that move. And it was a very back and forth deal, especially in that first half. Those situations aren't going to come up that often. You're not going to see many games played like this, where there's just so much familiarity between the two programs, where a lot of guys over there, like, they kind of know some of the secrets that Heupel doesn't like to get out. He's very secretive about his offense and doesn't put a lot out there. Well, some of those guys in that Oklahoma sideline, they know a little more than most people do. So it was just all that together kind of created this game that looked so much different than what we expected. But I think it's a game that Tennessee fans should take a lot of joy out of. Seeing the defense play the way they did, that sequence. I think somebody mentioned in the comments a little bit ago. They got that. They went 3 and out, or whatever the situation was. They punt. They down the ball, around the 5-yard line, and then they immediately get a false start on Oklahoma, back them up, and get that safety. At that moment, I agree. I think that was really when Tennessee took control of the game, and we all kind of felt better about, all right, this is the kind of game. This is the way we expect this defensive line to play. This is what we've heard about all offseason, and now they're going out and winning a game against a really good team.
It could have been close if they converted a touchdown when Tennessee, you had the strip sack and they got the ball within the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
If they convert there and Josh Josephs doesn't rip the ball out of Jackson Arnold's hand, and Tennessee gets the ball back, you could theoretically see it being a game. Ultimately, like I said, they could have tried to open it up for Nico if they had to. They didn't have to. That's the thing. And that was the choice that they ultimately made. There's a number of comments in here, but
that was a bizarre sequence, by the way. That fumble.
Yeah, the fumbles, then getting it right back, like, that's so rare in a game. It was incredible. But
My
Barford
anxiety
says
needed it at the time.
it was a big relief getting the ball back. There's no doubt. The case says facts. They don't want him taking hits.
I think there's some truth in that for sure.
There absolutely is. And in jail, mentions the start
especially in September.
Nico didn't have time to throw. Yeah, I mean, right now it's a longevity game because they know the dude that they have. They've watched this guy play and they've seen the throws that he can make, and you have to protect him with your life. Like, that is the name of the game this season because that is the primary thing that could derail everything. You got layers of defensive linemen. Not to devalue any of them. They're all doing an incredible job. But you got stinking Jackson Moy, who I don't want to say he was an afterthought acquisition, but he wasn't a highly lauded guy.
Yeah, he kind of was an afterthought.
I mean, he just wasn't. I don't think anybody was just like, oh my gosh, we got Jackson Moy.
Oh, nice. Cow. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, that's good. Add a little depth. And he goes out there, he's playing like a dog. I mean, that defensive line is just
He was
ridiculous.
fired up. He was fired up all night.
He's crushing dudes. Love the Polynesians. It's so great. But like there's like I said, there's just a whole set of guys that you have there. But with quarterback, it is one guy, and that's all you got. And so when your tackles are out like they were, and he's doing a little bit of running for his life because Oklahoma's defensive line is very good. You got to do what Josh Heupel did. He adapted. He won this game. The man has grown from his time early on at Tennessee. He's a better coach than he was at the beginning, and he was pretty good back then. That's the craziest part is that he suddenly realized, like, oh, I have this defense that truly operates at an elite level, and now I don't have to put my foot on the gas all the time and risk these things. I can kick a field goal.
Yeah. The more ways you have to win, the more ways you have to win. I mean, the better you're going to be as a team, really.
Yeah. I mean, Ernie says, run the clock and take your long shots. Yeah, the shots, they did take shots in that second half, but it was either Brew McCoy catches this ball or nobody catches this ball.
Yeah.
Like and they connected on that one. I mean, it went perfectly. And yeah, the only thing I think I hate is that it lets Oklahoma fans feel a little bit okay about themselves. Not that I want them to suffer, but to some extent, it's just annoying that they had that talking point of like, oh, well, it was really close. And if the second guy plays the whole game, then we probably win. No, you wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. There's no proof of that.
That's another situation, too. I know you're a freshman quarterback and coming into that situation, but I think really, like, on a personal level, that's a pretty low pressure situation if you're that guy. You're losing the game. You're probably not going to win. You kind of go out there and play a little more loose in that situation. The first guy's already turned the ball over a few times. You're like, all right, I'm going to get my chance here. We're probably not going to win this game. Let's just go out and see what happens. And you play a little more free. You're not thinking quite as much, and you pick up some yards, and you're able to score a couple touchdowns there. I think that's all that really was. Not taking anything away from Hawkins, by the way. He looked pretty good. I think in that situation, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Oklahoma, I mean, Tennessee had no film on the guy for a chunk of the time they were playing against him. They were playing prevent defense, which, ugh. But he scored a garbage time touchdown, and he scored a strong garbage time touchdown. Got the snot knocked out of him and almost died at the goal line. But he still they found a way with him at quarterback.
He came out of the game for the 2-point conversion. After that, didn't he? Right? Like they brought Arnold in to hand the ball off or something. It seemed like.
I don't fully remember, but they didn't get the 2-point conversion. But I on the whole, like it was from the defensive side. It went exactly like you would have wanted. It was incredible. I will say, Caleb asked a good question. He said, are the amount of penalties a concern or specific to this game? I think you could say potentially specific to this game because of the road environment.
There wasn't a ton of pre-snap penalties.
That's true.
It wasn't like that Georgia game a couple years ago. There was a lot of personal foul penalties. You had an illegal formation penalty where Oklahoma got away with one and Tennessee didn't on that. And you had some holds. Holding is always one of those things that it's so subjective when you go back and look at the tape. Sometimes it's egregious, sometimes it's not. The personal foul ones, though, those are ones that Heupel wants this team to be aggressive. He wants them to be extremely competitive. you walk a fine line there. You don't want to pull back the reins too much on your defense, but you want them to play smart at the same time. So that can be a tough one at times. And you've seen Alabama even do that a few times, and Nick Saban about lose his mind and almost murder a player on the sideline. So that's
the 22 game against Tennessee. Yeah. So many penalties. And I mean, that was a Saban team. It does it does happen. I like this question too from Ben. He said, would you compare Nico to Dalton Connect? Didn't it take a while for Dalton to get going and the reins were taken off? Sort of. I wouldn't directly compare the two because Dalton Connect had played college basketball for 14 years before he showed up at Tennessee. And he didn't have D1 experience because of where he was coming from, but he had experience. I mean, he was a veteran senior guy and had sort of been there, done that outside of playing in some of the raucous environments that Tennessee played in. But I think his was taking time to gel with the team, where Nico's is truly like, this guy is playing in his fifth game ever in college. But I like that comparison somewhat.
Chris Brazzell might be a better DK comparison. Yeah. He was at a smaller school, and you're still trying to get him going, and it takes a little bit of time. And I think he will, because he's a really competitive guy and really talented. And the game plan, just the way things have gone, he hasn't had a lot of moments to shine. The receivers are so deep that you haven't really just had to have one guy take over a game, though Brew did have a pretty big game against Oklahoma. I think he had close to 100 receiving yards.
Yeah, I don't mean to just completely rag on Oklahoma fans. Supposedly, from the people that were there, they were very nice. It was a welcoming environment. That's great.
Yeah, they were great when they came to Knoxville 10 years ago.
I mean, a number of them have been good sports about the entire thing. But what were you saying right before this? I got sidetracked by having to not say I was ragging on Oklahoma fans. What was the last thing you said there? I lost my train of thought.
Probably the Brazzell transfer was the last thing I brought up. I don't know where you're going.
I was going to say something about the defense. I don't know. Dang it.
Oklahoma's defense?
Maybe. I don't know. That pisses me off. But
that's the worst when that happens.
And see that I'm going to blame Oklahoma fans for that. I had to talk about you because you've been so sensitive that I lost my train of thought and couldn't make my point.
I was surprised at how much trash Oklahoma fans were talking before this game. I'm not a big like talk trash to other fan bases because I have no control over what actually ends up happening. So there's really, it's a tough concept for me, but they were really thinking that Tennessee was going to go in there and lay an egg. And historically, maybe they're right that they have, but I guess they just haven't really been paying attention to what Josh Heupel's been doing there.
Yeah, I went on a couple of Oklahoma shows before the game. One of them was on YouTube. One was radio. But on the YouTube one, I went back and I looked at the comments, and people were just like, "Who's this guy? An expert?" The guy called me an expert in the headline. It was like, "An expert. This joker has no idea what he's talking about." I was exactly right about almost everything that I said in this game. Like, I get it. You want to be sunshine and rainbows because you haven't looked so great up to this point. But I mean, I basically just, I didn't go on and say, oh, Tennessee's going to go stomp their head in. I explicitly said that. I was very kind, in my opinion, because I sort of felt going into that game, Tennessee was just going to run them off the field a little bit. Or at least that was a very distinct possibility. And I predicted that Tennessee would win by 10. Hello. I said that it wouldn't be a huge blowout, but that Tennessee just in the end was the better team pretty much comprehensively across the board. And that just is what it is. I get it. It was a great environment. Credit to Oklahoma fans. But yeah, just at the end of the day, Tennessee is who we thought they were, or who we hoped they were, I would say that. And then Oklahoma is who we thought they were too. And this is the result of that. It's just both teams actually being what was on film prior to the game, which is, it's not completely rare, but there are definitely games where that doesn't happen, where you think you've seen something earlier in the season, and then the game actually happens, and you go, oh my gosh, Jackson Arnold's not as bad as we thought he was. Well, in this one, he was worse. He was worse than we thought, actually. And Tennessee's defensive line, I think, was better than a lot of people thought. and Nico sort of got caught somewhere in the middle where he made explosive plays, but then also was kind of given this, given this chance to be a game manager of sorts, as I said, and he handled it perfectly. It was beautiful. But I'll ask you this, Zach, before we move on, because in the second half of the show, I want to talk about the rest of the season, kind of what this means, where Tennessee's at currently. What do you think what's the biggest concern for this team at the moment? Because it feels really good, but what could be better if we have to nitpick?
Yeah, well, I think there is one kind of big concern moving forward throughout the season, and really it's the offensive line and the health and staying healthy, because there's just no depth. And man, that was, we all thought Lance Heupel was going to play, and then when he doesn't play, and that's a whole nother conversation too, by the way. That's kind of the perils of the portal and the NIL era. That's probably your highest priced acquisition of the offseason, I would say. Lance Heupel, that was a battle that you beat out Oklahoma to get Lance Heupel, that went on for quite a while. And then, your biggest game of the year, the biggest game you'll play until Florida and Alabama in that stretch, and he doesn't play. And there's an injury, there's an ankle deal. I know there's other, rumors and stuff that have flown around out there about why or why not he didn't play. But, it's really unfair to go down that road. The fact is that he didn't play in this game, and it exposed the lack of depth at that position. And it's really hard to build depth at the offensive line at this point, because Lance Heupel would have been the backup tackle, left tackle at LSU, and he didn't stay as a young player because he wanted to play now, and that's happening everywhere. And I don't know what you do to remedy that.
Yeah, I don't like going down this road right now, but if you have to point out a weakest link specifically on this coaching staff, I mean, it's Ellerbe, right?
The depth just hasn't been there yet. And
like when you just juxtapose this offensive line against what Rodney Garner's doing, I mean, and maybe that's tough because Rodney Garner has literally put together one of the best defensive line units that we've seen at Tennessee in 20 some odd years. It's just crazy. But still, like, one dude going down shouldn't make that big of a difference. I would say, thankfully, I mentioned it earlier, I think Larry Summers did an admirable job, and he was actually highly rated by Pro Football Focus after the game for his effort after John Campbell went out. But losing one dude, and again, no offense to Dane Davis, local guy, plays his heart out, loves Tennessee. It's awesome. But he's just not an SEC body. And why is that the backup and not a young guy who's developing, somebody like that? Like, why is it a stalwart guy like that who just isn't physically there? It's Larry Johnson III, says Nugs. Apologies.
Who is Larry Summers?
So I said Summers, didn't it? Who is Larry Summers?
Yeah.
I have to look this up now. Who am I thinking of?
I think while you do that, I think really
Larry Summers, dude.
When you
or the former Secretary of State. I'm a little bit of a politics guy behind the scenes.
That is a deep cut.
Larry Summers. Oh boy. He was the Secretary of the Treasury.
That's even the deeper cut.
Yeah. Anyway,
we could do a civic segment if you.
I was watching some stuff in the last couple of weeks that I think he was involved in, and that's probably where the some political stuff. Anywho, outside of the Secretary of Treasury, it's Larry Johnson III. Yeah, that's so stupid. What am I? Anywho, what were we even talking about?
No, the offensive line.
The offensive line. Like, why are we going to Larry Summers? No, just kidding. Sorry,
that would be a problem.
Had to hit it. Yeah. Why are we going to the former Secretary of the Treasury? No. It is just why is that the case? How did we end up here when you look across the defensive line and they just have this wealth of riches? Like, you're just sort of pulling up the rear there.
I'm not ready to call for Ellerbe's job by any means, because the offensive line is playing well. It's just you don't have a lot of dudes behind the starters. And really, every guy they've had that has played significant snaps just about has been an inherited player or a transfer, from Cooper Mays and Spraggins, who were already here, Campbell coming from Miami, Lance Hurd now, even Gerald Mincey came from Florida, Carriage coming from Texas. You just haven't seen a guy develop, and maybe that happens. I know that position can take a while to develop and to kind of get going, but it's got to happen soon if you really want to be a championship contender. Because I think if the offensive line depth was similar to the defensive line depth, I mean, I think it would just raise the ceiling for this team just a little bit more, just enough to, when something like that happens, when Hurd and Campbell, who knows if Campbell's going to make it through the season with the knee at this point. I think it's going to be a battle all season long. And he's trying. Like, I'm not throwing shade by any means. You can't control that kind of stuff. But you're going to be in a bad spot if you lose both of those guys long term. And with Hurd, like, how many times have we seen these ankles go from it'll be okay to all of a sudden they're having tightrope surgery and we're hoping that they're back in early November. I mean, you see that across the sport from, Brock Bowers at Georgia last year, Cedric Tillman, that whole deal in 2022. So it could become a real issue moving forward. I think that's easily the biggest concern.
Yes. I mean, it's going to be all about the health of that O-line. And I saw some people are bringing it up in the comments. Ed says the field conditions were horrible. Yeah. I think it definitely cost Tennessee some points. I think that's 100% true. And then Nug says the field cost them a player and us the right tackle. Hopefully Campbell's all right. He did come back in the game and then went out again. And and man,
5 weeks from a good time.
Yes, it definitely is. But they need to be shamed for that field. That's not an SEC field. That's embarrassing. You should be ashamed of that.
There's like divots in the field.
It was horrific, and their guy ripped his leg in half.
Apparently
congratulations.
They just painted the field before the game to make it look better. Is what the word was out there.
So it was so bad, and I mean, you got one of your best defensive linemen done for the year. Way to go, everybody! I hope you're happy. Crompton actually brought up that he thought that they did it on purpose to try to slow Tennessee down as a strategy for playing such a fast team. God knows I don't want to make any accusations there, but I wouldn't surprise me.
I think it was pretty bad already. I would hope that you would not, put your own players at risk just to slow down Tennessee's offense. I don't know. Maybe, Tennessee's field's been rough at times too. Everybody kind of goes through that when you have that playing surface, but it was pretty bad. And after the South Carolina game in 2022 with Hendon Hooker and all the sand and whatever was going on with that field, I think everybody rightfully has a little PTSD when it comes to bad field conditions.
I mean, it legitimately makes me think, like, find these guys. Like, make them pay some sort of penance for how bad of a condition that this is in, because you think of the resources that all of these programs have. You have no excuse to not have a good groundskeeper. Like, come on. And I say the same for Tennessee if ours was in bad condition. So, all right. Anything else before we move on to talking about the rest of the season, Zach? Anything else on the Oklahoma game?
No, just glad it's behind us. I think that was one I mean, everybody had that one circled. You knew it was the first big game in September. And, in a way, it reminded me of that Pittsburgh game in 2022 a little bit before Tennessee really got going, where they just had to grind out that overtime win, where it felt like the offense wasn't really clicking. The defense had to come up big. They got a turnover in the end zone in that game. It wasn't the exact same type of game, but it reminded me a little bit of that. So maybe that's a good sign of things to come here for the rest of the season.
I hope so. And let's talk about it. Right after I tell you about the good folks at Zinn Sports. Football is back. And what better way to bet on the big games than Zinn Sports? When you sign up, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no danger first wager. If your bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. And for football season, Zinn Sports has a revamped betting platform for college football and the NFL. But what's better? With that new look, Zinn Sports offers daily promotions, including odds boosts, same-game parlays, no-danger wagers, and a whole lot more. They even have a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program, and if you qualify, You could earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, and even sportsbook bonuses. You can check that out at zinsports.com/VIP. What are you waiting for? Start betting with Zen Sports, where you'll receive true odds on all parlays and an enhanced user experience for all. Get going and download their app at zinsports.com today. Zen Sports, betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger. Wager limited to plus 500 odds. So qualified boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. You must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Still not perfect. 1% better every day. I'll nail that disclaimer at the end. So my question to you now, Zach, is that Tennessee is 4-0 through September. You're 4-0. You'll be 4-0 into October. Arkansas on the horizon, then Florida, then the big one against Alabama. And I think according to ESPN's FPI, Tennessee now has something like a 80% chance to make the playoff or something like that. Is Tennessee, from what we've seen, and especially in light of sort of that final conversation we just had about the offensive line, some of the depth issues there, is Tennessee a true national title contender this season, Zach? What do you think?
I think definitely. I mean, especially as long as the offensive line stays healthy, assuming that's not an issue moving forward. I don't see how you think they're not. I think they proved a lot beating Oklahoma. You kind of can say now, okay, Tennessee is really the better team. It's not just that, I think we all heard, well, you've just played Chattanooga. NC State's not any good. Kent State's terrible. And you might hear that about Oklahoma after this. I don't know. But that was a big test, and you passed it, did what you had to do. You got the win. Moving forward, I think the only two games that are big concerns are Alabama and Georgia. And I really don't know what to make of Alabama just yet. They haven't played a conference game. It's still early. I mean, they've looked good, but I don't know. We'll see how I guess this weekend with Georgia, we'll see how big of a challenge that's really going to be, or vice versa. Maybe we'll see if Georgia's really as good as we think after that narrow win against Kentucky. You should beat Arkansas, even though that's going to be a night game on the road. You've still got to go out there and hopefully not have a letdown game there. I think it's good that you got the bye week to kind of refocus a little bit going into that game. Here, you should beat Florida, even though they look good against Mississippi. Well, not good. They handled Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State's pretty terrible, and that's another game that Tennessee should easily win. So as long as you handle business, the Alabama and Georgia games, even if you lose those games, which I don't think Tennessee's going to lose both of those games, you still set yourself up in a good spot to probably make the playoff. You would probably not be hosting a playoff game at 10-2, depending on how everything else shakes out. But there's a good chance in the SEC, especially with that road win against Oklahoma, that you would be in at that point. So this game really sets you up nicely for that run. It's a control your own destiny kind of thing. You don't need any help, now that you beat Oklahoma, and you don't have to guarantee a split necessarily. And also, if you do beat Alabama, even if you lose to Georgia, you still probably are going to host a playoff game at that point. And that's not a bad, scenario to be in. So everyone stays healthy. It's always contingent on that. If everybody stays healthy, I think they'll be fine and be one of those 12 teams playing.
Yeah, it's so key. And clearly Heupel is prioritizing that with the way that he called this game against Oklahoma. I think I said it earlier. The man knows what he's got, and what he has is a very, very good football team. And it's one that if it can all stay together, it could absolutely be a national title contender. If you could get to 11-1 with the only loss being to Georgia, you play in the SEC championship game, I think you'd get that 5 seed, which would mean you play the 12, which would almost certainly mean that you play a group of 5 team. Is it still group of 5? Whatever it is. A Boise State or something like that.
Northern Illinois
Northern Illinois lost this weekend, though.
Oh, did they? I missed that.
They did. Yeah, sadly.
What a letdown.
Bad look for Notre Dame. But it still... that would just be so ideal. And it's right now it's a little bit of a pipe dream. It's every single goal you have is still out in front of you.
Oh yeah.
But it would involve another win over Alabama, who's very good this year, even if it isn't 100% proven out quite yet. I think it is true that they're very good.
Yeah.
And you know, it would just be if they miss the playoff at this point, and I think it sort of tells the whole story. At this point, if they miss the playoff, the disappointment would just be off the charts because what you have right now, like I don't want to put this kind of pressure on these boys because heck, this Arkansas game, if you screw around, it's losable. It absolutely is. Florida, they're pretty terrible. I don't know. That one might not be losable. Mississippi State, But, you got some that are left on the schedule that if you don't have your head in the right place, you could trip up. And that would be such a shame because what you have right now, if you can continue the growth with Nico and protect him like you did in this Oklahoma game, you have a guy that I think by the end of the season is going to be playing at the top end of any quarterback in America. He's going to be right there with all of the current dudes. Take your pick. And that just puts you in such a prime spot because if you're playing your best at that point, your guy is coming into his own and can lead your team in a one game, one off playoff, or not one off. What would you consider an elimination tournament like that?
Yeah,
that's everything. I mean, it's kind of like we talked about Dalton Connect earlier. Like that team was sort of playing its best ball right there at the end. They ran into a bus on Purdue, whatever. But when you put all the pieces together and everybody's healthy in that same spot, this is one of those teams that could turn over the apple cart. I mean, you have something special on your hands, and I don't want them to screw that up because I'll say it flat out because it's in the title. I think Tennessee could win a national title this year. Will it be easy? Are there teams that are more talented and quote unquote more elite? Yes, there are. It really is only Georgia and Ohio State. That's pretty much it. But still, those teams are out there. And so it's just a super exciting opportunity. And I want to see these guys carry it out. And one of the biggest pieces of that is going to be not just protecting Nico, but continuing his development and letting him come into his own here and become the dude that I think it's very clear he will eventually be.
Yeah. I mean, obviously avoiding the letdown is the main thing moving forward. But I really think this game, the beating Oklahoma, showed you that Heupel is continuing to, evolve, progress, get better as a coach. He's learning from the past. We all know 2022, they were right there on the cusp of the 4-team playoff, and you have that game at South Carolina. And, the narrative that was born from that, and because of those losses to Florida, the loss to Alabama, not having success on the road against anyone, at night besides Kentucky and Vanderbilt, you erased a lot of those questions by beating Oklahoma. And it shows that it's like, okay, they figured something out here. And I don't think it was just that Heupel couldn't win on the road. I think it was a nightmare situation in 2022 against South Carolina, whatever happened that game. Last season, I don't think you had the quarterback that was poised enough to go win on the road. And that's not a shot at Joe Milton. I like Joe Milton a lot. I think him being at Tennessee and starting last year was very important for the culture of this program. And he's a huge reason why the culture is what it is, the way that he handled himself in 2022. But he never had the poise that Nico had. And, even as a redshirt freshman, you think back to 2021, Joe Milton had played, that was his 4th year of college football, I think, at that point. And that Ole Miss game, running out of bounds at the end, not really having a good feel for where the game was at that time. Nico's already beyond that at this stage. So you've got a quarterback that's poised. That obviously is huge in these road situations. You've got a really experienced team, an older defensive line, and guys like Keenan Peely that are, 35 years old and have been around forever and just manhandling guys out there. All that adds up to, saying, yes, I do believe this team can and will avoid the letdown. Just stay healthy. I think I know it's cliche and it might seem lazy, but I think that's the biggest key to the rest of the season is just stay healthy and everything will be right there for you.
I mean, they've just showed that I think you can be very confident in them avoiding those flops because there isn't just that glaring weakness. Even the offensive line, it is probably the weakest spot, but it is not like if it's healthy and you have every dude up there, it's not going to be a game ruiner unless you're playing just a ridiculous defensive line.
And that was a big test. I mean, we're probably underselling how big of a test that was. That's
absolutely.
I mean, you said it. That's one of the best defensive lines you'll face all season. So you can afford an injury on the offensive line and beat an Arkansas, beat a Florida, maybe beat an Alabama. I don't know about Georgia. That might be a little bit tougher, but that's the one game that you're like kind of willing to concede a little bit. You want to win it, and Tennessee will do everything they can to win it, and I think they can. But Georgia can too, and they'll be the favorites in that one.
Anita says, great view on Saturday's game. Very much enjoyed what you both had to say. Thank you, Anita. We appreciate that. Rebecca says, Zach, love the hat.
Inspired by beating Oklahoma.
Had to do it. Had to do it to him.
Do it again in a couple years when they beat Texas.
Yeah. Anytime a Southwest team gets beat, we'll break out the.
I don't care if it's New Mexico. Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, that was another funny thing from that interview that I did on the YouTube show, in Oklahoma. I said something like, yeah, of all the teams that are in the SEC but aren't actually in the South and the East, such and such, and so many of these Oklahoma fans were like, Oklahoma's more South than Tennessee. Don't you know that? Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. You're not in the Southeast. You're not. You are not. If I'm being charitable, you're in the Southwest. And if I want to annoy you, you're in the Midwest. So, yeah, at least Texas is like full blown way down there. Like, come on. Just, the SEC was created in Knoxville, Tennessee. Do not come at me with that.
I will say their crowd, I mean, it's not Neyland, it's not Baton Rouge or one of those great environments like that, even the Swamp, but it was a pretty good environment. I mean, that's SEC worthy, I would say, what we saw from Oklahoma fans on Saturday night. But you got to sustain that. You got to do that every week, every primetime game. That's how it's got to be.
They get it. They way more than a Missouri.
Yeah,
who is absolutely not in.
I hate. Is there anything worse?
Southeast.
The televised Missouri games are the worst camera angle view of any. You can only see like half the field because the press box is so low because their stadium's so small. I don't know what it is, but it is a terrible view. I hate watching any game at Missouri. It's a terrible viewing experience. It's a cheap complaint, but
no, it's true. And then they go out and they get taken to double overtime by Vandy. And no offense to Vandy, they have the best team that Clark Lee has had. They also lost to Georgia State last week. So
after beating Virginia Tech, that's weird.
Not going to give them too much credit. Sorry, Vandy, but it is what it is. Just don't. They're a fraud this season. In my personal opinion, and maybe that soundbite is stupid by the end of the year, but. I mean,
it'd been nice for Vandy to come through there and go ahead and just get rid of the Missouri hype.
No,
because it feels like they're flying under the radar a little bit now. That Tennessee is kind of getting some hype, and Ole Miss is right there. Obviously, Alabama, Missouri's they got a real easy schedule, and that would be terrible to go 10-2, and that team somehow go 11-1 and sneak in because they didn't play anybody.
It's so annoying Now they've lost that running back. Their offense took a decent step backwards. I think he was a huge difference maker. I mean, he was the leading rusher in the SEC last year. So, of course, that's going to be a tough loss. But just freaking somebody beat those guys. It's so annoying. Bo Hunting says, what's up, A to Z? Go Vols. And he says, we don't give a damn about the whole state of Oklahoma. Absolutely. Supposedly, the team was chanting that in the locker room after the game.
Yeah, I saw some people say they might not do that because of Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel's not from Oklahoma. He's from South Dakota. He went to school there. I bet Heupel was right there with him. That dude's too competitive not to.
And let's finish on this. Heupel after the game. I said on the post-game show, we were talking about Heupel and the emotion of this game and what it means, and I basically said there's no way that he's gonna go out there, because Crompton was saying what he wanted him to do was go out on the podium, give Bob Stoops the middle finger, and basically be like, "Suck it, Bob," and walk away. But of course he's not gonna do anything like that. But what he did, I think, is almost better, because he didn't do any of that puffing his chest out. Just handled it like a true professional, shook hands.
That's like you've been there before, kind of
exactly.
Thing. And he has. I mean,
truly,
at the highest level of the sport.
Yeah, he said, "Thank you, see you later, bye." Went to the locker room, and then showed what it meant to him to win. Still, obviously, I put it in the title of the show. He with tears in his eyes, he said, "Thank you" to his team for giving something a little extra in this game. And it was so beautiful. I mean, and then Nico came up, gave him the game ball. It was so clear that every dude on that team believes in what this guy is preaching right now. And it's after all of the muck and the mire that we have crawled through to get to this point as Tennessee fans, your Dooleys, your Pruitts, your Butches, it brought tears to my eyes. How beautiful that moment was to just see a set of guys that truly love their coach, love what he's doing, and as a result, like I honestly, I think there was a good set of players that like Pruitt. I will say, and maybe there were some players that like Butch, although don't talk to too many of his players if you don't want to hear some bad things about Butch.
Was the only one that
that might have been it. But to hear them love their coach and it turns into results. It makes them a cohesive group that they play so well together. You can tell that they love each other, and it turns into wins on the field as a result. Like, that's so incredible, so fantastic. And I can't say enough about it. It was such a great moment.
Yeah, I wrote an article today. It's like, Josh Heupel proved this week that he's a top 5 at least coach in all of college football. And it's super subjective, right? So you can rank that however you want to, but he's one of the elites at this point. And it's not just because they beat Oklahoma. I mean, that's a big part of it, but this was a tough week. This is a tough week for any team with all the noise, from the implications of the game to Heupel returning, the circumstances under which he's returning with the controversy of, the Bob Stoops stuff and getting fired 10 years ago and everything. There's just so much history there. And it's just, I don't know if I've said it was such a unique situation, and he put on a masterclass on how to handle it. He didn't. I was super intrigued about how this week would play out, and it didn't really play out how I thought it would. It really played out better than I thought it would. He didn't dodge the questions completely, right? Like, he didn't seem annoyed anytime he was asked about Oklahoma, and he spoke to the media. His main press conference, the SEC teleconference. He has some interviews with ESPN. He's obviously going to be asked about the Oklahoma stuff, and he welcomed the questions. He answered the questions. He dodged, the big answers, like Reese Davis asked him about his current relationship with Bob Stoops, and he just talked about how much he learned from Bob and the opportunities he's received. It was a super classy response with, nothing really about himself in the game, and he never made it about him in any way. And his players said that too. You see truth from the players, and they said the same thing all week. Like, he hasn't made it about himself. He hasn't brought it up a bunch, but we know. I mean, they're not dumb. They understood what it was about. To handle this game that way, to have his team prepared to compete the way they did and not get blinded by the outside noise, that was as impressive as anything I think you'll see in coaching. And you look back now, and we're into the 4th year of this, and you go back to early 2021 and just how terrible the things were with the program. You found the perfect fit. Danny White brought in Josh Heupel, and I don't think there is another coach in the country, period. Kirby Smart, nobody that would have this program exactly where it is right now. No. Like Kirby's perfect for Georgia, and he was exactly what Georgia needed. I mean, they've won championships. There's proof of that. But this, you can't just take coaches because they were good at one place, and it's going to be the same at another place. You've seen it with Scott Frost. You saw it with Billy Napier, Dan Mullen, Chip Kelly. It's just not easy to recreate what you have in one place somewhere else. So Heupel was just the absolutely what Tennessee needed. He's what they need right now. He's perfect for this fan base and the temperament of this fan base and everything that goes along with it. There's not many people doing a better job than that guy is right now. But I was incredibly impressed by the way he handled this week. I already, had a lot of respect for him as a competitor and as a coach and what he's done. But this took it up a level because it was just somewhere that he hasn't been before, and it's something that he had not experienced or had to navigate before, and he did it flawlessly. I mean, he couldn't have handled this week any better.
It's really that makes it so sweet because of how devastating this has to be if you're an Oklahoma fan. Like think about this scenario. If T. Martin went, because it's sort of a similar situation. Yeah. Like Heupel sort of came in and was a little bit of a one-off, but won a national championship.
Almost the same era too.
Yeah, at a very similar time. And like if T. Martin went and then became your offensive coordinator in sort of a bitter way, was fired, and that there was fallout there, and then he comes back, kicks your teeth in, doesn't get up and say, screw you, Phil Fulmer or whatever, gets up and puts on a show that just probably makes you yearn so badly for him to be your coach, to just go, why didn't we hire this guy? We maybe had a chance. Oklahoma fans leading up to this game, they loved to say, that that Heupel would have been our coach if we just wanted him to be, but no, he wouldn't have, probably. I don't know exactly what happened, but that has to be so devastating if you're just watching and just going, this was our guy and we fired him and he came back, kicked our butt, and then he's leading this team back to glory. Like, that's just got to make you so sick.
Especially considering the way they lost Lincoln Riley and that whole deal, because they did have they did have that, for a little while. Like, well, Lincoln Riley came in and went to a college football playoff, and a couple of Heisman Trophy winners out of it, and that's true. But now he's at USC, and things aren't going that great out there for him at this point. And who knows how Venables turns out. I think he's a good coach, but yeah, I mean, Tennessee got the better coach, obviously, but they also got the better version of Heupel, and I think that's what gets lost in a lot of this. Like, Heupel isn't who he is right now, and he said this. I mean, he isn't who he is without going through that at Oklahoma. I mean, he had to leave Norman. That's all he knew. He was briefly at Arizona, working for another Stoops, and but otherwise, that was all he knew, was working for Bob Stoops in Norman. And you get out and you go to Utah State and you go to Missouri, get a taste of the SEC, and you get your first head coaching job at UCF. Like, all of that stuff led him to being who he is right now. And who he is now is not necessarily who he was at UCF. Like, he has really come into his own at Tennessee. So it was that whole perfect storm of everything. Like I was saying before, if Brent Venables gets fired tomorrow and they decide they're going to go get Josh Heupel, and I don't know what Josh Heupel would do. I think he would stay, because, I mean, you don't want to get fired twice by your alma mater. I think that's
yeah.
I think after going through that and where he's at now, I don't think that's a road that he would want to go down again. But that's, speculation and not even in the conversation right now. But there's no guarantee that you would transplant him to Oklahoma and recreate what he's done at Tennessee. There's just not, because it's everything. It's Danny White. It's the fan base. It's the players that he had when he got here. It's the ones that stayed. It's the Hendon Hookers that he didn't even bring in, and Hooker didn't come to play for him. It's the Joe Milton situation. It's all of that stuff together that has got this momentum going the way it has. And, it's a special thing. It really is. And it's, Tennessee fans, after everything that we've all been through the last 15 years, there's no doubt that, like, this is the payoff that you've been waiting on this entire time, and finally here, it seems like.
It only took 15 full years of suffering. That was it. That's all we had to do. Was just wander in the wilderness like the Israelites for all that time.
Pretty much.
Oh man, I like it.
And Kirk Herbstreit even referenced Moses. Inadvertently.
He did. Yeah, what was he talking about?
The Nealon's 10 Commandments, and he kept saying that. And I think Chris Fowler might have known, because he was just kind of like, He just kept kind of trying to change the subject. He's like, "Do you have them memorized?" Nealon's 10 Commandments. You know, the 10th one, it says, "Find the surest way to win," which I don't think that's part of the maxims. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it's what's that guy talking about ever? But
Yeah.
it just is. It's so great. He handled it with so much just class and dignity, and just in the exact way that you would want him to, and also in a way that sends a message back to Oklahoma that probably makes them sick. Like I said, that probably just has them ill with regret. And is that not everything that you want? You got the win. You sent the message that we have their coach and not the other way around, and well, we have their guy. He was and man, it was poetic justice. That was the exact phrasing that I used on Twitter, is poetic justice. So good.
Yeah, I think the long time Oklahoma columnist, Barry Trammell, he was in the Tennessee post-game press conference to ask Heupel a question, which was, it's kind of funny. He asked him what he would remember the most, or about this whole 30 hours of being in Norman, and Heupel's like, walking off the field with a win, which is very Josh Heupel-like. But his post-game wrap-up, he said, Heupel is a volunteer and not a Sooner, because somebody didn't want him here anymore, and said he wasn't good enough for the job anymore. And Trammell said, if Oklahoma doesn't turn it around, there's no reason that Sooners fans should be rooting for anybody else but the Vols this season. And I think that alone tells you what kind of person Josh Heupel is, because if we've learned anything over the past week with all the Oklahoma people talking about Heupel, and really over the last year or so, because anytime that era gets brought up, Heupel was in that conversation, as he was so important to that team and that championship run. But the impact he's made on teammates and coaches, I mean, everybody that talks about him, it's never anything negative. It's always about his leadership, who he is as a man, as a father, as a husband, all those things, and who he is as a competitor, one of the most competitive people that they've ever met. I mean, so it was really cool to hear that from a place that he was fired from, and they still have that much reverence for him. I mean, there's not a bigger compliment you can give the guy than that.
It's just so awesome from top to bottom. I mean,
Yeah.
what a weekend. One
fun,
for the
yeah.
ages. And then we didn't even bring up him walking out with Morgan Wallen at the concert. Afterwards,
even then he looked insanely focused and ready to go.
They came back from the game, and Brew McCoy, Nico Iamaleava, and Josh Heupel. Oh, well, and Peyton Manning in full uniform. In full uniform, and his old helmet. I saw somebody say it was his helmet from the Orange Bowl, the original one. Dug up his old helmet, wore the full uniform out.
Probably had to get it out of a case in the facility somewhere.
I bet Roger Frazier's got it back there.
Yeah.
The long time equipment manager, not equipment, whatever you call him, equipment guy for UT. They all walk out with Morgan Wallen at the massive Neyland Stadium concert. Obviously, everybody went crazy. It was awesome. Viral moment where everybody was posting videos of it online. It just like I said it exactly like this on Twitter last night. Like, what a time to be a Tennessee fan. Truly.
Oh yeah.
Who could have envisioned this in almost any way, shape, or form, that it would be this special, sort of all at once again, just all of these incredible things happening, and not just, basketball stinks, but football is good, or football is terrible, but hey, at least we're making the Sweet 16 in basketball. None of that. It's everything all at once. It's just incredible. And the biggest dude in country music just happens to be a massive Tennessee fan. Like, what more could we ask for at this point? It's absolutely crazy.
And you gotta be happy for Peyton, because Peyton has stuck through this program.
Oh,
through
boy.
Thick and thin. He's been at blowout games in Athens where we knew it was going to be a blowout, and he's still there supporting Tennessee. Like I said, through thick and thin. I don't know any other player, NFL player, that represents their alma mater to the extent that Peyton does. Well, I mean, his own brother isn't even that way with Ole Miss, and that's their family school, but Peyton is on another level with that stuff.
And it's so great because he now has become a symbol Like there were all of those years where it was the Peyton curse. No, Peyton's gonna be there. Oh no. He was at the Alabama game. He was at the baseball national championship. I believe he was at this Oklahoma game. At what point is he the good luck charm? I mean, I heard he was gonna be there. I think he was there, right?
He said he was going to be there. So I don't know. I don't know. If
I just don't remember that they usually like show him on TV a bunch. I don't remember them doing that. But
Ryan Bosworth was there.
Oh, he was there. They showed him plenty
right before the safety, actually.
But I heard he was going to be there, and I was like, we're winning this game. It's done and done. I mean, hello, everything is falling into place, and so it's just truly. I mean, what a fabulous, unbelievable, incredible, fantastic time to be a Tennessee fan.
And we get to go enjoy a stress-free weekend now with Tennessee off.
It's going to be nice. We are going to get hit by a hurricane, but other than that, I saw the track of it earlier today. It's coming up from the coast, like right to Knoxville. So.
Speaking of hurricanes, Miami is playing pretty well now. It's got to feel like late 90s, early 2000s with Tennessee and Miami up there in the top 10, close to the top 5. It's kind of fun. It's good to see some new teams up there.
Yes, some new old teams back in action. Nebraska has failed us once again, but
it's fine. I'm not Matt Rule. I'm a Panthers guy, Panthers fan, unfortunately, and that wasn't as bad as it is now. But I don't know. Maybe Andy Dalton's their savior.
Andy Dalton coming in. It's the Redheads, like you and me.
Yeah.
We
certainly wasn't Bryce Young. I mean, they spent all week talking about that guy's not the problem. Maybe he is. Yeah.
Maybe.
Kind of like Will Levis in Nashville.
Oh boy. No,
Can't wait to see what he does this week.
Let's not even talk about that. Charlie Burris.
What Will Levis mean we get?
He's on a hot streak. Charlie Burris. Zach Reagan. Thanks so much to everybody for tuning in. Oh, here's another compliment for you from Billy Bob, Zach. The Oklahoma hat.
Yeah.
As we said, every time Tennessee beats a Southwest team, we might have to bring the hat back.
Yes.
It's been a hit. Thank you for watching, everybody. Nugs, Billy Bob, Bo Hunting, Anita, Pepper, Rebecca, Ernie, David, Vol fan for life, Ben Hall, JL. We could not appreciate it more. You guys are the absolute best. And that's it. All right. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.